You're watching Just Press Record right here on Cultish Creative YouTube. I'm your host, Matt Zeigler, and it's just me. That's all you get today. Just me. But I got notes. I am calling this the year-end Cultish Creative Clip Show Extravaganza. What I did is I took the scroll on the phone through the episodes. I thought about the moments that jumped out at me at the most, and I said, let's just take these clips. I've been making these clips for social media. Follow me, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all the places. I've been making these clips. Let's talk about them again. These are etched and burned into my brain. And how many should I do? I should do 7. Why? Cultish Creative, my personal archive. The name of this channel, cultishcreative.com, is the website. It turns 7 this year. Somehow, some way, I've been sharing a daily entry into my personal archive for 7 years. That's weird, but it's also testament to having a streak, having a habit, and why it's worth it. So when I think about 7 years of creating these posts, I just want to remind you, the whole idea was, can I notice something that piques my curiosity? Can I reflect on it? Can I take a minute to sit with it and be present? It's hard to be quiet with the things that you consume. And can I reflect on it? Can I have that complete thought? Can I jot down that entry before the 4th step, make a habit out of it? I get out there, I do it again, I go find something new. And on 7 years, I can tell you this, the website is now my personal library, my personal database, my personal archive. And yes, it is a network of my ideas and reflections. I consult it all the time. I use it in client meetings in my professional life. I use it with friends in my personal life. I'm learning how to use AI to search through the stuff and do a better job of curating it back to myself when I want to find it. It's the best thing I ever did. I want you to know how to. Go to cultishcreative.com, check out the personal archive posts at the top, new, start here, go there and check it out. But this was my realization. So 2 years ago, when I started to getting to dabble in this podcasting stuff and guest on other channels, I slowly realized I don't just want a network of ideas. I want a network of people. That's what this channel is all about. Everything you're going to see on Cultish Creative here on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, it's going to reflect this. This is a networking exercise. This is the networking version of having a personal archive. And it's the idea of networking with the people that are the ideas for my source material. These are the people that if they were on a podcast together, I would listen. I just happen to get to play host and draw inspiration. So when I went through this list and I saw these and these ideas jumped out at me, and I mean, immediately I had 20 of these clips. I winnowed it down to 7 to celebrate 7 years. I want to work through these with you today. And if you're not already reading or subscribing, hey, I know you don't need another email in your inbox. Just go to the website and check it out if you want to. There's even a search bar, or go search it using your favorite AI tool and do it that way too on any topic you want. My personal archive is in public. It's yours too. But for today, I want to go through these. I want to rattle off some of my favorites with you, not in a particular order, but in a particular order. Let's start. Clip number 7. Ben Hunt, Paul Millard, they came on the show. Stunning conversation. I want to play this clip about make, protect, teach, Ben's idea, how we do it in the real world. And it was a very political year. So talking about making, protecting, and teaching for the people in your network, I can't think of a better place to start. Roll the clip, Jack.
I just want to come back to one thing, though, Paul, what you were talking about how people are grateful, or what drives the formation of a community around this solution you're chosen. The similarity and experience I had is that I don't travel as much today as I used to. I used to travel a lot. I still travel a good bit, all over the world. And wherever I would go, everywhere in the world, every place in the United States, and this is not just, urban areas, I really mean everywhere, you will find men and women of goodwill doing small acts of kindness and service everywhere in the world, without exception. And also without exception, when you talk to these men and women doing small acts of service and goodwill, they think it doesn't matter. They think it doesn't matter. The story, I believe, that drives all of this, our system of raccoonery, is that
That's great.
we have been told from birth that what matters is not our individual acts of goodwill and service, what I like to call making, protecting, and teaching, that doesn't matter. That what matters is what you do in service to a corporation or to a political party. That's what matters. And it's the most frustrating thing when I talk to my kids' friends. They say, okay, well, I want to matter. I want to make a difference. And the path to mattering and making a difference is, well, I'm going to go work for, this political campaign, or I'm going to go work for this company or this organization. And that's a lie. That's just a lie. What matters are those small acts of kindness and service. And it requires someone like you, Paul, in your way, like I try to do as well, is to stand up and say, no, this is what matters. And if you get people to say, oh, it is, then it is like scales falling from eyes, right? It is like, well, yes, I am a human being because of these small acts of kindness. This is what matters, not my service to a political party or a corporation.
What matters most in life, I can't help but reflect back on this for 2024, again, in this very political year that we just got through, is this idea that what matters most is not the path that others lay out for you. Paul Miller's book, the new book in particular, Good Work, but the earlier book too, The Pathless Path. It's the idea that it's the things you do for yourself and others. Those are what set up the path that you're on. What you make in terms of what you write, share, your intellectual property, what you protect, which are your values in terms of relationships, the very people and stuff you make it for, and then what you teach to the others so they can know what they can make, what they think is an option, and what's worthy of protecting, of community, of the people we love and care about. It's that combination of make, protect, teach, and you want to tie your identity to that. You don't want the path that others are on. You don't want the path that others laid out. Here's the clear career path. Here's what you do. Here's how you get the pension. Here's how you do the thing. That's fine if you choose that path, as long as you build the rest of your identity and community around it. You can't do that without, again, Ben's brilliant expression, make, protect, teach. What a fantastic conversation that was. And a reminder, this holiday season, whatever political sign that neighbor had out in their yard, hey, walk over and say hi. Don't let that be your identity. Let your actions be your identity and how you choose to make, protect, teach in the real world. Clip number 6. Are you ready for this? Dave Nadig, Angie, Coley. Get through the clip about the crazy wedding and party that Dave's talking about first, which is wonderful. Make sure you listen to it. Angie's mosh pit lessons are still, this was close competition here for me in my brain. But Dave's idea at the end of this clip, anything you share, you are co-creating. Profoundly beautiful. Producer Jack Forehand, extra shout out. He does all the behind the scenes work for this. Jack, roll the clip.
You're giving me credit for being too good a musician, right? So like I'm absolutely a punter and rhythm follower on these kinds of things. But the experience that I had where that was the closest was we played a friend's wedding. And like we did a whole set and it was great. And we played songs people could dance to in the whole 9 yards. But having never played a wedding or an environment like that, we did not count on the sort of asymptotic inebriation level of particularly the sorority girls who were there for the bride. So by the time we'd gotten like 2/3 of the way through our set, they just assumed that this was live band karaoke. And we had hordes of young women coming up demanding that we play songs that we're all in our phones going like, I've never played the song in my life, but it's the same 4 chords as every other song we play. So we'll figure it out. And some of us like literally had not even heard some of these songs before. So we're looking at each other being like, is this in 4/4? What just happened? And it was like my favorite performance experience ever because we had all of these drunk women from the audience coming up and just belting. Some of them were good. Some of them were terrible. But like in terms of reading the audience, I think it's always important to remember anything that you're making that's going to be seen by another human being is co-created, right? You're only a tiny piece of it, right? If you're not in the head of the person who's consuming it at the same time, you're missing the whole point, right? as much as I mostly play music for myself, the act of creation for an audience is very, very different.
Anything you're making that is going to be seen by another human being is co-created. This whole show, this concept of I want to show people how you can play more with your network. That whole concept is right there. You are making stuff, and as soon as you share it with the world, it is an act of co-creation. The audience is now involved, and you are now this tiny little piece of the bigger pie. Because you as that tiny little piece, the one person on stage in front of thousands of other people, or in front of a bunch of, drunk 20-something ladies at this exciting event where you just happen to be in the cover band who's on stage getting crazy requests in Dave's story. The act of co-creation is the act of creation in and of itself. It's just part of the broader experience. Anything with an audience, approach it this way. Brilliant, 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 brilliant way to frame this from Dave. All right, clip number 5. This is from Julia, Carreon, and Hal Hershfield. Fantastic conversation. We do change. It's hard to remember it, but we need to remember it to be kind to our present and future. I see you, Hal. Selves. Run the clip, Jack.
But I also want to respond on a personal level to what Hal just said.
Please.
Hal, I wrote what was called The Future of Advice for wealth management, what was going to happen in the future. And I wrote it like 14 years ago, and almost everything about it has come true. And it was a completely contrarian view to what all the money that was being plowed into Robo at the time. So that's what Matt is talking about. But what I wanted to say from a personal level is that when I was 44, I was managing 500 people in 13 states. And I thought that I would forever want to be a big executive who traveled around on a plane and got more and more and more power. If only I'd been able to tell my current 54-year-old self that I couldn't have cared less about any of that shit at 54, that I would have saved a lot more money and I would have put my ego in a box a lot sooner, because what I wanted at 44 is completely different than what I want at 54. And so, Hal, I'm going to go buy your books and forever worship at your feet and wish I had listened to you 10 years ago. All right.
I mean, it's so interesting. Matt, I know it's like we're going in different, there's like, what were the Russian dolls with, there's like layers of this conversation here, right? I just want to respond to one thing, which is this is in my research, actually. It's Dan Gilbert and Jordy Klobach. This is a Harvard psychologist. They call it the end of history illusion. And it's this idea that we think, it's exactly what you said. It's this idea that we think we're fully baked now. Like, I know that I've changed from the past to the present, but now is who I am. And it's very hard for us to imagine changing into the future. And that's there's almost something that's unfair about that to our future selves, because it means that we might like do something now and lock ourselves in a position later on that we regret. And the reality is, and here's where what you said is so like, I'm getting so excited by it. The reality is, we change as much from 34 to 44 to 44 to 54, 54 to 64. And in fact, Dan Gilbert, the psychologist behind this, who's incredible. And Julia, you may remember him. He was, when Prudential did all those ads during the Super Bowl, this was probably 10 years ago. He was the psychologist in those ads when they, it'd say like,
How
think
funny.
of somebody. I don't know if you remember this is like ages ago. He was 64 when I interviewed him. And
Wow.
he said, and this is only a couple of years ago. And he said, I did this research, and he said, I never would have believed that I changed just as much from 54 to 64 as I did from 44 to 54.
Wow.
And he said things you can't anticipate, like grandkids for him. And, I forget, like stepping back on some research, whatever the case was. I don't even remember the details. These things we can't anticipate. And it's so interesting because we do change and we don't see it.
Maybe it was Julia and the 44-year-old comment. Maybe because I turned 43 this year, this is why this was on my mind. But then to have Hal say it the way he says it, we think we are fully baked now. Before I was cooking, but now it's done. Now the cake is made. It's fantastic. Now here at 43, everything's okay. Nope. And everything Julia says about that. This whole statement of, if I knew now at 54 that the things I wanted wouldn't be what I wanted at 44, I wouldn't have tried so hard to force so many of these things into place. And then to have Hal come back around with the Dan Gilbert story and say, hey, Dan Gilbert said to me at 64, this is the happiness guy. He says at 64, I didn't know any of the things that I wanted at 54. Are you kidding me? Right? If we're going to accept this is the reality, that we're not fully baked now, that we do change, it's going to pull us way more into the present moment. It's going to make us forget those identities. It's going to make us focus more on the act of co-creation with the people. It's going to make us think about make, protect, teach. I promise I'm not just going to repeat the other point on the way, but you should feel the way this snowball rolled through these episodes for me. Absolutely incredible point. We do change. Be a little nicer to yourself in the present moment. Your future self will appreciate it. All right, clip number 4. We are flying through these now. Josh Spector, Dennis Moseley Williams, the fine Canadian that he is, with my West Coast friend. Most popular episode this year, just saying, if you didn't catch it, it's not too late. Plug into those stats. They are talking about the balance between improvising and having or doing bits. Roll the clip, Jack.
But a lot of it is improv. And this also gets back to like where we talked about listening, right? Like someone might have a question and I can help them and give them advice and find the answer. But what I'm really doing is pulling it out of them, right? So I can't just sort of be like, here's what you should do. Usually in these conversations, they say, oh, I want to know how I can grow my, here's a perfect example. Someone might say, I want to know how I can get to 10,000 newsletter subscribers. Well, my answer is not going to be, here's how you get to 10,000 newsletter subscribers. The first thing I'm going to say to them is, why do you need 10,000 newsletter subscribers? Oh, I want more clients. How many clients can you work with a year? 20. You don't need 10,000 newsletter subscribers. You need 20 clients. You're asking the wrong question. Let's talk about how you can get 20 clients from your newsletter instead of how you can get 10,000 newsletter subscribers and go from there, right? And so like there's an improv element to all of it. The other thing that I've realized both in my own podcast and being a guest on other podcasts, and it's funny because even starting the show with you asking, which I didn't know you were going to ask, asking about the story about the Sam Kinison tape. What I've realized is after years of watching comedians develop and do bits, I am now developing and doing bits.
So we do bits. We all do bits, and we do them for a reason. We do them because we know they work. And extra Nadig and the whole it's an act of co-creation thing, anybody who's done any media training or anything else knows you have bits and you show up and you perform them. And they get a good reaction. You know what people respond to. It's not hard. It's just a matter of it's a truth. If you don't have bits, if you're all just off the cuff, you might show up and be really boring. You want to have bits just the same way I want to have notes and I want to have things to consult here off the screen to keep me on track. But this idea that it's a balance of your bits and your improv. You can use your bits when you want to extract something from somebody else. You can use it to help, maybe not force, but you can use a bit to help trigger a reflection in the person across the table from you. When Josh goes out in the world and he says, let me help people create more clients from their content, what he's talking about is take the content, treat it as a bit, turn around, use that bit to get more clients out of the world. That's the whole newsletter example at the beginning of the thing. When Dennis Moseley Williams goes out into the world as a consultant and he helps people with experience design, what he's doing is he's saying the experience as you navigate through it is a little bit improv, but these bits are going to help be your checkpoints along the way. That understanding of how you need the balance between bits and improv, profoundly important, and an encouragement. Go out, figure out what your bits are, write them down, practice them, show up with a couple different places, and don't worry about them getting stale. I surprised Josh at the beginning of an episode with a specific call for him to do bits, knowing that he probably doesn't get asked to do that one very often. But if I did it, he's going to be delighted and comforted by the fact that he can show up and do this thing to kick us off on this conversation. Absolutely wonderful. Let's keep going. Number 3, the extravaganza is hitting up. 3 to go. Who's it going to be? It's just tragic. Vic Ruggiero, Christina Garnett, Breadcrumbs. Social media is about leaving breadcrumbs, a trail for people to find the real you. Roll the clip, Jack. Does he need that still with the real world meat space reality of like getting in a band and driving around and playing all these shows all over the country and world? Does he still need that? How do you answer that? Why?
Because you need to be a part of people's everyday lives.
Mm.
You have no idea that like you post a story and because of that, someone puts on a vinyl or someone
Mm-hmm.
listens and looks for a show. And so what you are doing is you need to look at social as breadcrumbs.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone's just assuming like I'll do one post and that's gonna like fix everything. That's not enough. Everything that you put on social is a breadcrumb. It's gonna make people think about a concert that they went to. It's gonna make people think about a song or a city that they love to visit. It isn't necessarily gonna direct straight to you, but then if it does send them to a positive memory, you get to be a part of that. You are attached to that little piece of their day. And so how can you create breadcrumbs so that you get to be a part of their day? So like, for example, you're going on tour. How can you keep them updated with your tour or give them like a day in the life? There's so many people who are like, all right, cool, touring band, but what does that actually entail? What does that look like? What's the good, bad, ugly?
Yeah.
Like there's so many people who are like, I've watched Spinal Tap. Is that an accurate description of what that's like?
Sadly.
There's people who are like, that is that accurate? Is that what it's like even in the year of our Lord 2024? Like things like that. There's little things that people want to know that maybe they're too afraid to ask, or maybe they've just always been curious. So think about if you were yourself pre-Slackers and you were thinking about this life and you were thinking about what that could look like. What are the questions that you would be afraid to ask, but you would want to know the answers to? And start that off with your content.
Bringing these two together was really special because bringing these two together were two people I knew were doing the same thing, but at totally different scales. And I'm using scales very, very intentionally here. So when Vic and the Slackers, who you should all go listen to because I've been listening to them for 30 plus years at this point, which is nuts. When you listen to the Slackers, you see a band, a New York City band from the early 90s who's doing a semi-obscure version of music, and they built that audience one person at a time. You go, you play in a room, the people recognize you, pre-even mailing list days. They're waiting for you to come back in a year or two, hopefully tell a friend and bring that friend. Every single step of that way was how do you build the trust and respect of an audience the hard way over time. Now, Christina Garnett, number of tech companies, HubSpot famously as the chief customer officer for a period, now doing her own work. All brilliant, by the way, all super, super smart. Christina knows how to take that and say, those one-to-one connections, those customer referrals, the way the people talk about you when you're not in the room, that's still everything. So even if you're going to be a ginormous company and you're going to be all over the world with your fancy tech and technology and everything else, you still have to care about the stories people tell about you when you're not in the room. And how do you do this? How do they both do this in a social media era? Christina's not going on tour and Vic's probably not starting any, tech company anytime soon, but that customer relationship is everything. So how do you do it? Things like social media, being social and social media. And you do it by leaving breadcrumbs. Not the whole loaf, not cramming a giant special into it. You just need that bit. And the breadcrumb, to take it back over and over again, represents an act of co-creation. Because when she tells Vic, you should show them how you set up the stage when you're on tour, little things that people might be wondering, what you're doing is you're instilling that act of co-creation between the artist and the audience into this shared experience. Watch his face when she says it. It's the greatest thing as he starts doing it. In the whole interview, he says things where it's like, you talk to marketing people and stuff, and you go, hey, we've been doing that for 100 years. You just put a fancier word on it. A lot of this stuff is super intuitive. Your intuition is going to tell you what's right here. But understanding how every act is leaving little breadcrumbs. I mean, look at me. This backdrop's about to change in the new year, by the way. But I've got little breadcrumbs all around me. I want you to see the lunchbox. I want you to see the Dilla poster back there on the wall. Maybe you can see the Wawa pedal and what some of those books are. This right here, my faux Banksy that is beloved. And if you've never asked what's on the other side of this painting, you got to look. Or go look at my Bogomil Baranowski interview. He actually asked me about this. Kudos to him. These are breadcrumbs. They are inviting your creation to say, I'm giving you a little nugget. You want to pull on this thread? You want to find out what else is there? Thank you, Christina and Vic, for that idea. All right, clip number 2. We are almost there in this holiday extravaganza. Cara Brookins, Rusty Guinn, talking why you always go to the funeral in extra epsilon theory language, but also you got to have your people that you care about, whoever they are, and you got to show up for them. And you want to build those connections worth showing up for. Roll the clip, Jack.
Always go to the funeral. And it has a lofty concept, but it's also a very literal concept, which is if you're ever wondering whether to go to the funeral, go to the funeral. And I think it could probably be augmented to say, if you're ever wondering whether to go to the 8-minute speech your friend is giving 8 hours away, go. Man, that's it. And you never do it because you know that they're going to do it in return, or because you know that they had. It's because of the underlying relationship there that warrants that level of commitment to each other. And just having, and we call that, having a pack, but like there's a million ways to describe it. And having those people that are there for you in that way, that whether they agree with what you're going to say, whether what you're going to say is some big lofty thing or just a company pitch or, it doesn't matter. They're your people. God, I love that. Cara, that's really cool.
They want you accountable too, right?
Yeah.
Also,
Yes.
something that we had in those tribes, in the 120 people tribes, like they didn't let you get off track. Like if someone misspelled time and their family or to a friend, like they kick you out of the tribe and you're dead. Like we have our sense of belonging, and that's a problem on social media too. Like we have that sense of belonging. We don't want to get kicked out of the tribe. So sometimes we end up getting pulled into things that, are pretty far away from the beliefs we should have. But, in this case, to have a friend who's like going to hold you accountable if you're off track in your business, in your personal life, whatever, and like they will tell me if I say something or they see something that they think is like, this is not really aligned with the direction that I thought you were going. Like, I think we should talk about this. And that over time, those kinds of friends, business partners or whatever, accountability partners, mastermind partners, whatever you've labeled them, those kinds of people get to know you so well that they do know what you're aligned to. If you're truly authentically showing yourself, and it's hard to find sometimes. I've gone through long periods of my life where I didn't feel like I had that. Like I always had it in some level in my children, always just us. We didn't have other family here. We don't have other people. I had one sibling who was disabled and he passed away. We didn't have people like a lot of people do. So there were long times in my life where I didn't have those close adult humans that I could do that with. But it's like when you meet them, like, and until so often, like Therese, the lady that I'm about to drive down to Dallas and listen to speak, like we sat together at a dinner by accident, like totally random, sat together at a dinner, barely talked at the dinner. Like we're both tired. It's at the end of an event. But we're like, hey, let's schedule a call after this event. That call was like from start to finish, we were calling each other out on things. It was like, this is it. Like, we're in this together.
I'm glad Jack Forehand has this commitment to me where he's able to help me edit these clip shows. Just saying, thank you. The commitment we have to other people, not just to our bits. Extra emphasis on that. You can be committed to your bit, but you got to be committed to your people. This is where the breadcrumbs all of a sudden stack up to have something in meaning. This is where we've co-created this together. We've built this relationship. We've created an element of trust. There's not a clip from it in here, but the interview I did with Kyla Scanlon and Scott Bradley, we talked a lot about how nostalgia is a tool for building trust. And when done right, trust is not a bunch of BS. That authentic relationship gets pulled all the way through. That's some bread of life stuff right there. That's a really deep level. So whether it's death and funerals as the reminder, the always go to the funeral, as Cara tells the story, always go to that friend's speech. She had a friend giving a speech, 8 hours away, and she's going to get in that car and drive 8 hours for the 8-minute speech. That is some profound stuff where these are your ride or dies, your people you show up for. These are the people you're going to make, protect, teach the space. This is how we do in this community. And I don't care what political party you are. I don't care who your favorite sports team is. I just want to show up for you as another person because that's how this stuff sticks together. That is a value worth protecting. And Cara's story too, her book Rise, so much heavy heartache inside of that thing and yet so uplifting at the same time. Fantastic. One of my personal favorite ones of the year. I was so charged up coming out of that conversation. My dog and wife were like, why are you so excited after this? It's way too late for you to be this excited. And I was, for a reason, not just because I was very jealous. Rusty had a, little glass of glass of bourbon there next to him, and I did it. Too much fun, guys. All right, you ready for this? Number one. This was hard. This was hard to settle in on which one, but I don't think I had another clip that got so many responses on social media and other places, emails from the blog post about this and everything else, where people were, oh crap, I got this, and I felt it. And this is Sean Delaney and Mark McCartney, a very special conversation, kind of an extension of the Adam Bruderly, Justin Castelli episode, but Sean Delaney, Mark McCartney talking about being present, and not just trusting, but listening to your gut. Roll this number one with a bullet clip, Jack Forehand.
Sometimes that energy, Sean, I don't know about you, but comes from me without words, but just with almost like a very clear action from it. Like Matt mentioned, I left finance the day I actually, or the weekend before I was leaving it, I was supposed to start a new job with a 40% pay increase. And so I told people, oh, I'm doing this job. I've been offered this thing, probably, fluffing my own feathers a bit. And then the weekend before I was supposed to start the role, I was laying on my bed doing a body scan, and I just had like almost like a whiplash of like a lightning bolt through my body. And my missus is from Germany, hence I'm living in Berlin now. But at the time we were living in Vancouver, she was still back in Germany over Christmas. I simply picked up the phone after I had that experience and I said, there's no way I can do this. She goes, cool, where are we off to? I said, I don't know. Maria says Peru is good. And then that was it. Like this idea of classifying where you are in the process, like Sean said, looking back on my decisions, I probably never would have made half of them if I knew how long the process was actually going to take. But there's a trust in doing things that resonate with your own truth, that even irrespective of outcome, when you start to live life more from that perspective, life itself ends up being the reward. Like there's not a place to get to or to go to, because right now I'm making whatever vibration I'm supposed to. I'm moving through this world in whatever way I sense I'm supposed to, if you know what I mean. And that, once again, is not really something you can put words on. Like it's a really strongly felt experience. So yeah, I can see, Matt, why you put us together here. Many things I'm just like nodding in agreement, like, yeah.
Mark, I think you said probably the best line that we said this entire conversation, and that was to hold what is present right in front of you. That right there, right? If you can teach someone a skill, can I sit there and hold what is transpiring in front of me?
How's it feel, right? How's it feel in your gut? That first sense, that first instinct about something. Life itself is the reward. That's what Mark says. And then Sean says, can you hold what is present, sit there and hold what is in front of me? So not to be in the future, not in the past, just to experience it. This is the whole point of this podcast. This is the whole point of Just Press Record. Play more with your network, not just your network of ideas, your networks of your people, and let that be a virtuous cycle. You're only going to know when it feels right. You got to do the body scan like Sean and Mark talk about. You got to do that interpretation of, how am I in this moment, and am I out of time? Am I chasing somewhere on the timeline? Am I aligning these values with the people that I care about, like Rusty and Cara were talking about? Am I thinking about the breadcrumbs that I'm leaving them and they're leaving for me, like Vic and Christina talked about? Am I doing my bits but leaving enough room for improv, like Josh and Dennis spoke about? Am I giving the credit to the people who are going to be in my life right now in this moment, but who we're going to become later and who we were in the past, like Hal and Julia were talking about? Are we looking at the act of co-creation across these networks of people, across these ideas that we've networked together to say, I might have created this thing, but your response mattered just as much, if not more? And finally, are we demonstrating with the stuff we make, our values for what we're saying are worth protecting, and now we're teaching others, these are my boundaries. These are the things I want to protect. These are the things I care about. Just press record. I'm calling it. We're a year old. Cultish Creative, 7. These clips mean the world to me. Everybody's participating. Everybody's following along. Thank you so much. I have never had this much fun. And as far as I can remember, I don't know what 53-year-old Matt is going to think about this, but I'm pretty confident he's going to know this was a good idea. I'm going to do an individual post about each of these clips over on Cultish Creative. Come follow along there. Subscribe if you want the daily emails. If nothing else, know it's a resource. That's my personal archive. I'm sharing it with all of you. We got so much more to come in 2025. I am so excited. Play more with your network too. Trust me, it's worth it. And I'm out. Thanks for joining us. Like, comment, and hey, subscribe below to Cultish Creative on YouTube if you haven't already. As the good compliance people want me to remind you, Matt Zeigler, that's me, is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments. No information on this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of clients of Sunpoint Investments. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you found this useful. I hope you talk to a professional before you try any of this stuff at home. And most of all, I hope you've subscribed. Be nice to each other out there. And don't forget, head over to cultishcreative.com and let's make curiosity a habit together. And I'm out.